Hi, so my name is Babar Amin. I am head of product for Anatac. So Anatac is a company that just came out of stealth, and what we're focused on service accounts. So these are machine-to-machine accounts, non-human. So think API keys, think access tokens, think client secrets, certificates. And these machine-to-machine accounts, they are a huge problem area that needs to be solved for. And the problem with them is discovering them, knowing where they are, what they're doing, what they're connecting to, where they start, where they end, what protocols they're using. Because if you don't have visibility into these accounts and their usage pattern, you can't manage them. And if you don't have that visibility, you can't change their passwords. So a lot of customers have service accounts where they haven't rotated their password for multiple years, right? They're using old protocols. And so what we'll talk about today, I'll show you how we find them, what you can see in our discovery and our monitoring tool, right? So a couple of differentiators. First, why we are different than everybody else. So number one, we do both on-prem and cloud, right? On-prem is really difficult. And clouds are just all messy, right? So we're doing both of those things. We do discovery, right? The efficacy of discovery is super important, right? And discovery is a really hard problem. That's why most people actually shy away from discovery, and they start walking around and start talking about, oh, let me just, change this or change that. No, discovery is key. You have to know what is missing and where things are before you can do anything with it. So, second thing for us, we have huge amounts of expertise in graph databases. And graph databases are fundamental to seeing relationships and how things are laid out and what is connected to what, right? And we can do that at scale. So that's the other thing. And that leads to our third point, which is that we are able to look at and show chains, correlation chains, access chains. So imagine that you have a developer that is checking code into Git. So they use their own account to check code into Git. Then there's a process in Git that will run, which is a different account, that will do the compile, and then push that to AWS or your other cloud provider. There another account will wake up and it will deploy what you just pushed, switch traffic, kill the old stuff, right? So that chain, that correlation, you don't see that, right? And it is a really hard problem to solve because you have to connect those dots in a manner that you can say, hey, this is what it is. From a discovery perspective, we don't just discover, based on static information. We are discovering continuously and monitoring continuously. So we're a streaming solution, right? Because the identity vulnerability is a dynamic problem. And you cannot have a static one-time scan that can solve that. You need a dynamic platform to solve the dynamic problem, which is identity vulnerability. Right? So let me show you this. So we collect the information, we'll take your identity information, we call that inventory, and then we take access event information and access logs, then we bring those together, correlate those, run it through machine learning, and put a time element on that and look for behavior. So behavior is super important because behavior tells us whether an account is behaving like a service account, a machine account, or a person, right? And that is important because if somebody switches back and forth, that's a bad thing, but we can capture that, right? If somebody's privileges are escalated in the middle of night, we know that happened, right? So we can highlight that. So then we bring all that information to our dashboard where you can see things like the differentiation and the distribution of access methods, your authentication methods. You can do that by failure. You can do that by by overall distribution. You've got some quick filters here. Top accounts. So that you can look at information quickly, and it has to be actionable. There's a lot of dashboards out there that give you so much information that you drown in alerts. That's not actionable. So here's where you can see the different accounts, right? So, if I go here, I can see, these are my service accounts, right? I've got some hybrid accounts. So hybrid accounts are accounts that are behaving as both a service and a user, right? Ideally, they should be 0 because that's a bad thing to do. And then, I have my service, my regular service or user account. So let's go into one of our filters here. So when I go into my high impact filter, now I'm looking at accounts that are a high impact. So impact score is a calculated value for us that we create based on other values that we are seeing, right? So we take into account, access method, password age, how many sources and destinations, what is the impact radius, who you're connected to. All of that is brought together to create and calculate an impact score, right? And people can say, look, I want to weight this differently. They can give us different input and they can say, no, weight this differently. So each customer can decide how their impact score should be calculated. And that's super important. So then we rate everything based off impact score. So if I want to look at that impact score, I want to look at that particular account, I can go into my graph view. So now what I'm seeing is that I have an API gateway, I have an app server, and I'm seeing the service account that is talking. But what happens before that, right? That's important to know. Why is this happening? So if I look at that, I can say, I have a partner portal, which is a web-based resource. So some users, some partners coming in from there, they hit my API gateway, which is, creating a connection to my app server. And then what is happening to my app server, right? So my app server is talking to some kind of a data store, a database. So this is a user account, most probably. This is a service account that is scoped to call these APIs. This is a service account that is scoped to call databases, right? Which is all good. Right? Then we have a time element up here. So time-wise, if I say, okay, you know what? I want to see what happened, let's say what happened 2 weeks ago. Aha. So now I go back 2 weeks and I'm seeing that 2 weeks ago, I have something else happening there. Something is coming in, somebody's logging in here, but then they're bypassing all the security measures and they're going all the way to the database, right? So like, why and what is that? So I can see that Robert is RDPing into the API gateway directly. But worse is that they're using a service account, which is a privileged account, to jump and bypass all the security measures here and go all the way to the database. So that is an access chain, right? Because I can correlate the two things together. And that is super, super important that nobody else is doing.